All right. Listen, you want professionalism? Take your ass to NPR. Stay away from black radio. We live hard. Anyway, I'm back, and I got y'all back on YouTube. They cut me off, but I hit too many. I didn't bugger the algorithm too much. But anyway, let's talk about impeachment, uh, Brexit. And now I was going to give this a more technical title about the fall of Western, the first domino and second domino and fall in global white domination. But my vocabulary is not aligned with the vocabulary of the masses. It's very popular to talk about global white supremacy and white supremacists. And if you listen to the Bro Diallo show, you know that I resent the term supremacy and supremacist. I don't think that we should use those terms. It really annoys me the fact that when white people misbehave, we come up with these terms for white people. We talk about, a redneck, toothless redneck goes get his shotgun and shoots up a bunch of black people for no reason. And we'll call him a privileged supremacist. This white boy can't read. This white boy ain't had a tooth since he hit puberty. This white boy done lived in a trailer and pooped in an outhouse his whole life. No education, no prospect, no opportunities in his life. All he got is a gun. And he goes and takes it out on the other population of vulnerable people. And we will call him a privileged supremacist. White privilege. A supremacist exercising his privilege. I mean, we just use the most flowery terms. When we look at other nations, if it's a black, brown, yellow, any other person, red, than a white person, we call them tyrant. They call us savages. They call us thugs. They don't call us supremacist or privileged. So I've been working on, and I see a little, very little, where black people have stopped calling insane racist privileged. We call it, I see people, more and more people are adopting the term pathology and pathological. And again, and repetition is the essence of propaganda, so I'm going to say it. I'm going to repeat myself. If you call what white people do privilege, or if you call their population privilege, then the logical step, the logical progression from that is you're going to want some of that for yourself. You're going to want some of that for yourself. So my older son, who is 17, he is more privileged than my younger son, who is just 11. So my older son gets more responsibilities. He gets more concessions. He is able to just get up in the morning, hop in the shower, grab his backpack, and hit the front door, and half the time I don't even know where he's going. Apparently, this face tat rapper, Trippie Redd, is coming to Chicago. And my son came and asked me, could he go? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, where is it? Who you going with? Long as make sure he's safe. This is the south side of Chicago we live on. But 90% of the time when he wants to do something, I trust him. Like, if that's what you into, if you want to do face tap rap, I didn't raise you that way, but go on. I blame your mother. So he's allowed to go. If my 11-year-old came and said, can I go to that concert? I say no. And the younger son looks up to his brother. He admires his brother, probably more than he admires me. He really looks up to his brother. And if he asks me for the same things, I say no. And he aspires to be able to do what his brother does. He wants his brother's privilege. And I look at him and say, well, when you're older, when you're more mature, when you're more consistent, you can get your Metro card and your bus card, and you can come and go as you please, and you can have and you won't have us breathing down your neck. My son sets his own schedule. He does his own work. He's his own man. Hell, he'll be moving out in this year, in a few months. He'll be off somewhere on his own. So when you call something privilege, generally the unprivileged aspire to get that privilege. And we end up that way. So we call what white people do white privilege. So we want to get in that position. And when we get in those positions, we do the same thing. I imagine in 5-6 years from now, my younger son will be coming to me to go to see some other crappy rapper. Now, I don't know what's left to tat for you kids. Tongue tat rappers. Because, I mean, you're already up in the face. They already tattooing their eyeball. What's left to tat? The tongue? So now it's going to be a whole generation of rappers with tongue tats. And he'll, instead of face tats, in my day, it was controversial to get a neck tat. Now we up to tongue. So when my youngest son will probably be listening to rappers with tattoos all over their tongues and inner cheeks. And I'll say go. If he's anything like his older brother, responsible and diligent and, brilliant, I'm like, go. But we get in those positions and we start Obama. So got into a privileged position and he behaved exactly like a white man. I say the only thing, Obama's presidency was a tragedy because the only thing that was historic about his presidency was that he was a black man. There was nothing else historic. Other than him being a black man, he did not in any way divert from the norm. He was a centrist neoliberal Democrat, just like Bush. Hell, Nixon. Jimmy Carter was more progressive than Obama. Richard Nixon had more progressive policies on the table than Obama. FDR, there were white men who had more progressive policies than the first black president. So, anyway, that's why we have to stop saying privilege. Because everybody wants privilege. Hell, most people deserve privilege. So when we associate with privilege, with white behaviors, white aggression, white imperialism, white capitalism, we're going to start aspiring to be like them, which when we win, we lose. We winners and losers at the same time, whether we obtain the privilege or never get it. So I say call it pathology, because nobody wants pathology. Nobody wants to be pathological, to the point where people who are overtly pathological deny that they're pathological. So we should call it white pathology. We shouldn't call a person a supremacist, because supremacy is not a negative. We've allowed them to turn that into a dirty word. Everybody should strive to be the best. My wife is a cupcake supremacist. You ask her, can nobody make vegan cupcakes better than her? I've been listening for 20 years about this woman. And then this is what she does. Just to let you know, if you have a bakery, you sell vegan cupcakes, she loves going out to buy other people's vegan cupcakes. And she pretends like she's being nice about it. So she'll come into your shop if you're a vegan baker, and Dr. Mingo come in your shop, don't think you got a friend. Let you know she's in there to compare, compete, and try to tear you down. That's what she does. Last time we were in Kansas City, they got this vegan bakery called Mud Pies. And she's like, oh, let's go to Mud Pies. And she goes and buys a bunch of cupcakes. And we take them back to the hotel room. And I'm like, just enjoy the cup. No, I mean, I'm going to enjoy it. And then she, look at the icing. And she starts to dissect and inspect it like, my cup. So she's a cupcake supremacist. It ain't hurting nobody. It ain't tearing nobody down. Yeah, it's tearing people down, but it ain't hurting. That's what supremacy is. It's something where you think you're the best basketball player. Chiefs are the supreme NFL team right now. That's different than hanging somebody up from a tree and cutting off their genitals and mutilating their bodies, burning their homes, cutting babies out of wombs and stomping living fetuses with your boot. That is not supreme. That is aggression. That's his pathological aggression. So you don't call white people who want to kick out all the Jews or kill all the blacks and put people in slavery and build walls and put children in cages. That is not supreme behavior. That is subhuman behavior. It's not supra, above, it is below. That is subhuman. So you can call them a white subhuman, or what I prefer, white aggression. You're a white aggressor, not a white supremacist, because you do nothing supreme. You do nothing better. There are people, Native Americans were able to preserve the ecosystem of the United States. Africans were able to preserve the ecosystem of Africa. Australians, the Aboriginal people, were able to create one of the most unique and diverse ecosystems in humanity for 7,000 years. We lived in harmony with our environment. Y'all come here and in less than 500 years and drive everything to extinction and then pollute everything where you can't even drink water from the stream. That is not supreme. You didn't do better. You didn't do better than anybody else as stewards of the land. as governors, as rulers. You didn't do better. That's not supreme. If I ran on the football field during the 49ers and the Chiefs game, and I had a machine gun, and I shot everybody on the field, and then I picked up the football and ran it in the end zone and spiked the ball like I'm the best football player. Like how? Well, let's say, oh, he's a football supremacist. No, I'm a murderer. I've committed genocide in order to get a privileged position. That's crazy. That's pathological aggression. I don't know why I have to beat this home every day. But anyway, back to my point. Impeachment, Brexit, and the insanity of white hegemony. What I wanted to call it was impeachment, Brexit, and the fall of white supremacy. But I didn't want to fall into that trap of trying to, because I want people to understand what I'm saying. So I don't know if people understand white hegemony, white aggressor, or white domination. It's still not to the point where I can just comfortably use these words and know we're all on the same page. So I figure we use hegemony, but I really want us to start saying white pathology, white aggressor, white aggression. And white aggression is a very special form of aggression. It ain't regular aggression. It ain't street gang aggression. It ain't street hustler aggression. It ain't gangbanger aggression. We're talking about aggression on a global scale. Obama has done more damage and will afflict more generations of people than 1 billion gangbangers could ever do. And he ain't never, threw up no signs. But he was the king of set tripping. You talk about taking over the block, he's toppling entire nations. He's destabilized entire regions. And I'm telling you, and this is what I say, everything you're upset about right now, we're still going through the Obama fallout. We have not come out of the Obama storm. We're not going to feel the impact of Trump's policies for another 10 years. Obama said that when he became president and people were blaming him for everything that George W. Bush did. And Obama said, wait a minute. The government is like an oil tanker. You can't just turn it like you would a car. It's a long arc. And Obama told us every other day while I'm president, during my first and second term, anything you don't like, that's the fallout from Bush. He said, you're not going to feel the impact of what I do for a few years now. So what you suffering and the displeasure that you're feeling now and all the insecurity you see around the world, that's everything. That's how presidents do. They set up things that don't take effect until they're out of office, because that way they can have plausible deniability. That's how politics works. But I digress. So you mad at Trump right now. You can't be mad at Trump for another 4 to 6 years. Anything you don't like, 90% of the things you don't like right now, including the persecution of immigrants, that came under Obama. Everything you see Trump playing with now was set up by Obama. But anyway, the one thing that when white people took over the world, white hegemony is basically white people ruling the world. And even when white people aren't there. So hegemony means that white man could be sitting in Europe, sitting in Canada, United States, Australia, where there ain't a white man within 1,000 miles, but his will be done. Remember the people in the Bible, the Christians love to say, where there are few gathered in my name, I am amongst them. That's how it is for white hegemony. So you got people in Africa where there ain't no white man in sight, but the white man's interest, the white man's agenda, the white man's value system is governing everything they do. You have households in the black community where it's a black husband, black wife, black kids, they got a black dog and a black cat. But everything they do, to how they pray and relate to God, the dreams that they have and what they want for their children, their fundamental value systems is all white. And I ain't just talking about Uncle Tom handkerchief head boot licking. I'm talking about, I just last week, go back to black Puritanism. I did a 2-part on Wednesday and Friday on black Puritanism. Even Afrocentric, black militant conscious, whatever, blue, woo, woo, woo. They are there living like an old European style nuclear family. And it is insane. It doesn't even serve white people. White people in mass are starting right everywhere from France, UK breaking up, to here in the United States. But one thing white people, when they took over the world, one of their rationalizations and justifications was, we are going to implement the rule of law. Before the Europeans came, there was anarchy. People were savage, but we set up governments, we set up international standards, and we all obey and adhere to the rule of law. And as a result of the rule of law, that we should govern, to the point that even if you have a sovereign nation and you violate the rule of law, that will justify us invading your nation, overthrowing your government, and putting you back on the proper path to Western civilization. So they say when Saddam attacked Kuwait, they went to fight for Kuwait's freedom, even though Kuwaiti was a dictatorship. It was an oligarchy. There was no freedom for the people of Kuwait. They literally, when the United States went to liberate Kuwait, Kuwait was literally a slave nation. And on top of that, Kuwait used to be a part of of Iraq. It was under the British protectorate. And after World War II, the Brits literally carved out Kuwait. And Kuwait was slam drilling into Iraqi territory. And slam drilling is when you drill down and then lateral. So if you border an oil-rich nation, you can stay on your side of the border and then funnel into the ground and siphon the oil from under their soil into your own nation, which is a violation. So Iraq did the geological surveys and say, "Lo, they stealing our oil. They're not willing to negotiate, and they used to be our territory. And we could lawfully reincorporate them into our nation, but we'll let them have their own little slave oligarchical nation. But stop slam drilling." And they went to the international court. They went to deal with the international trade bodies. They went to the UN. So anyway, the United States says, well, Iraq, Saddam, violate the rule of law, so we're going to bomb them, kill over 1 million of their people, and set up factions and all that because of the rule of law. So there was a time when the United States, no matter what they wanted to do, there was a movie called Coon Dance, where this man, he was a minister, and he ran a whorehouse. But he found a loop in the law saying that because he was an ordained minister, when you came into his whorehouse, he would officially marry you to the whore, or to the sex worker, I guess. But back then, this was made in the 70s. Marry you to the sex worker. Let's bring it up modern. Let's improve ourselves. He would marry you, legally marry you to the sex worker. And then when y'all have sex, if you've only been married for a limited amount of time, 2 to 3 months, you can annul the marriage uncontested. So he would marry you to the sex worker. You would spend the night legally with the sex worker, and the money you paid was not, you weren't paying for the sex, you were paying for the marriage license, and you would pay for the minister's fees, and you would pay for the annulment. You weren't paying for sex. Sex was just something you had. So you walk through the door, you pick the woman you want. He'd marry y'all. Y'all'd have sex all the night, spend the night or the weekend together. That next, when you're ready to leave, he'd annul it, and there's all paper. And he kept saying, legal-like. That's what it, not legal, but legal-like. And that's how America runs the world. They find these loopholes to do imperialisms. They find these loopholes to do genocide in the tribe. But they always make sure the paperwork. For some reason, even Europeans, when they were enslaving us, they had to go to the Pope. And the Pope gave a papal bull and say, well, you can enslave Africans as long as you bring them into the light of Christ. So even though you're enslaving their physical bodies, as long as you liberate their souls, you're doing God's work. So they needed paperwork. I don't know, this Western culture is obsessed with paperwork. That's why I'm telling y'all, and when y'all want to talk about revolution, and y'all going to take up guns for revolution, and the people who control the community don't come into our communities with guns, they come with paperwork. They come with clipboards. Ma'am, we have this document, you signed, you owe us this money, paper. Man, this is a paper-obsessed culture. Anyway, legal-like. So that's how the United States is ran all over the world, legal-like. like that whorehouse. It was legal, and they couldn't bust them unless they changed the laws. And even though they're engaged in criminalized activity, they have legal protections. That's what corporations do. So anyway, the United States has always operated from the founding, from the charter, to the Declaration of Independence, to the ratification of the U.S. Constitution, to the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Everything they did was paper, and they had these white men in stuffy suits and go into these government buildings and bang gavels and say, order, order, order. And they could be rape and murder, pillage, genocide. But there must be order here. We got to follow the rule of law. And even when they were lynching black people went to the government and says, listen, they killing us with impunity. All over the Bible Belt, all over the antebellum South, even in the cities. Don't think Chicago didn't lynch black people. Malcolm X said, if you're south of the Canadian border, you're south. And Ida B. Wells. And they would go to the federal government and say, we citizens. I read the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. We are full citizens of the United States, guaranteed. Well, like, well, if you look here, jurisdiction. We don't have jurisdiction to go into these states. You have to go to the county sheriff. The county sheriff is the one who organized the lynch mob. Well, you have to go to your representative, the paper. You're not following the rule of law. And so then black folks said, we want a federal anti-lynching bill. And even Ida B. Wells went to the feminist movement at that time. They didn't call themselves feminists, the proto-feminists. The suffragettes. And they said, listen, we got other priorities. We can't vote, and we don't get to inherit our husbands. You know, we got paperwork issues. So they even hit us with that. Even school desegregation. They didn't say, well, give black people their rights because it's the right thing to do. They said, give white people the rights because this president, Lyndon Johnson, and signed this bill, and I got this paper. And then they send in the National Guard to follow the paper, to follow the rule of law. But now, with this impeachment hearing, boom. The one thing that white people use to say, we are not savages. We are not barbarians. Even though they were doing savage, barbaric behavior, was that we follow the rule of law. And before we kill you, we're going to get paperwork to allow us to kill you. War Powers Act. Before he could go kill 1 million people in Iran and Iraq, George Bush had to get his War Powers Act. And then it was transferable. Within that document, it was transferable between administrations. So Obama was operating under the War Powers Act. And if you wanted to protest Obama doing drone bombs and expanding the war beyond the territorial, he would go get his paperwork and he would send his attorney general and say, I am following the rule of law to the letter of the law. I am legal-like. That is done. That is done. The United States engaged in what Boots Riley called self-fornication. Now even though many of us have been saying, Gil Scott, the Constitution ain't nothing but a piece of paper. These people don't care about law. They don't care about standards. They don't care about civility. These people are barbarians. They are high-tech barbarians. And I don't care if they got a club or a femur bone to beat you with, or they got a drone to bomb you with. It's still the same basic savage mentality. And now, all these great philosophers, all these racist philosophers, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Hobbes, all these ideologues, all these years and decades and more than 200 years of tradition, white people just did away with. And this is why white people have abandoned rule of law. Because all the people they oppress was getting hip to say, okay, you want to play paper? Let's play paper. For years we would say, let's just do the right thing. Let's just do what's just. Let's distribute the resources in the most just, equitable way. Give people what they earn. And punish people who do wrong. Where do you talk about, oh, y'all always protesting, why don't black people protest when another person kills another black person? The reason we don't protest when a black person kills another black person is because we know that black person is going to come under the full weight of the law. He's going to have the book, the gavel, and the bench thrown at his head, and they're going to give him all the time they can give him. There's no need to protest because Justice will run its course. The reason we have to protest when it's a cop is because they do the opposite. They don't even find him that he's committed a crime. They won't even acknowledge that a crime was committed. That's why. It's simple, but they had the rule of law. But now we know the highest legislative body, which is the United States Senate, the most prestigious political position in the United States is that of senator. Not even the president. The president only serves for 4 years. Senators serve for 6 years. It is the most prestigious body. And the Republican cult, it's not a political party anymore, it is a cult. The Republican cult has said, to hell with law. And they were always rulers and kings and dictators. Throughout history has said you always need to keep this thing called heir of legitimacy. An heir of legitimacy. AOL. If you don't have an heir of legitimacy, if you have an heir of legitimacy, you can do almost anything to the people and they will bow. But if you lose this heir of legitimacy, then you're just one thug, powerful thug, beating down vulnerable people. And you're going to provoke an uprising. And it's not just the U.S. citizens that need to realize that the Republican Party, and by extension the entire U.S. government, has gone off of the rule of law, the heir of legitimacy, that the United States is a corrupt oligarchy that sees itself and puts certain citizens above the law. The only thing that made them, when the founding fathers, the rapists, the pedophiles, the genociders, when they founded this country, they said, we will have no more kings. We will have no more heirs and rulers. This will be a democracy. This will be a democratic republic, meaning that a wealthy man or a poor man all have to adhere to the same laws, and that no one is above the law. And that is their justification, because they say, well, we want to take this land from the king. And they say, what makes you better than the kings? Why should I help you, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson? Why should I help you overthrow this tyrant? Say, because we will not be tyrants. You can take us to court and you can sue us. We will not be able to hide information from you. We will be open information. Not only can you get the information about what we do, not only can you impose the rule of law on us, hell, you can say whatever you want to say. You can freely attack us, freely criticize us, freely denounce us. First Amendment right. You can come together, freedom of assembly. Freedom to arm yourselves. That is all out the window. We now live officially under the Trump dictatorship because Trump is above the rule of law. That's all a dictator is a person who governs a nation who is not subject to the laws of the nation they govern. A person who is not under the law that they're imposing on others. That's all a dictator is. And it doesn't mean that you're good or bad. It doesn't mean that dictators kill. That means you dictate down, that you tell other people to do things that you're not subjected to. So the United States is officially under a dictatorship. And some dictatorships go on for generations. Some dictatorship might go for 1 or 2 terms. But whenever a person, and people, other presidents, go back and look. Go back and look. There was never such, because even when Clinton was impeached, remember, Trump said, I'm not giving you files. He had people violate subpoenas, even though Clinton was acquitted in his impeachment trial. He followed the rule of law. Legalized. He did a lot of horrible things, but they were all legal-like. There has never, and Obama, Bush, Reagan, Carter, on down the line, they were all legal-like. I'm not tooting the horn. You go back and listen to the Bro Diallo archives. I'm not a fan of any of these fascists. I'm just saying there's a new form of fascists. They've always been screwing us over. But now they're taking away the lubrication. They've always crushed us, but the hand they crushed us with used to have a velvet glove on us. I say that all the time. The velvet glove has been removed from the iron fist. So Trump, and the chief executive is over the State Department. The chief executive is over the FBI and civil CIA. Trump is the top law enforcement, all of the law enforcement agencies. So your local police, your county, your sheriff, your highway patrol, all of them come under the jurisdiction and are subordinate to the federal policing agencies. Trump is the top law enforcement official in the United States. The Congress are legislative. They create the laws. The executive branch carries them out. And when the executive branch says, I don't give a damn about the laws, and they have, and the Senate is supposed to be a co-equal branch. The Senate is not there to be an ally or a support to the Trump. It is supposed to be an oppositional force, a three-tiered government. And each tier of government is meant to police and keep the other tiers of government. So the president has veto power over the Congress. The Congress has impeachment powers over the president. The judiciary, the Supreme Court, has the power to annul both of them. And then they both have the power to appoint and disbar the justice. So everybody got a weapon to use against everybody else. And there's supposed to be existing tension and antagonism between all three branches. So when you have all three branches of the government coordinated and aligned between a overtly criminal president, United States is officially under a dictatorship. And people have always talked about, oh, America's a dictator. They would say, oh, Reagan is Hitler. Remember Ronald Reagan? His middle name, I don't remember, but his name, each letter of his name had 6 letters. And they said 666. Ronald Reagan's the beast. They said that Obama was a dictator. All these people are dictators. Everybody gets called it. Anytime someone gets into office that other people don't like, they call them a dictator. But the textbook definition of a dictator is finally here. You finally get to say, oh, he's a dictator without just jawboning, where it is a legitimate title of a dictator. And so now that we're beyond the rule of law, the United States has become what they call a unilateral rogue state. But I want to share this thing from Dave Zirin with everyone. So I'm going to share this recording of Dave Zirin before I go off the air. But tomorrow we're going to do a part 2. I mean Wednesday we're going to do a part 2 on we're going to talk about the U.S. unilateralism, the fall of Brexit, and what we are really gearing up for is another pan-European war. And pan-European war is when all the major European states embark on what is called a murder orgy. World War I, World War II. It ain't a world war if black people are dying, if Asians are dying. You could kill 100 million Congolese and Vietnamese and Hondurans and overthrow entire regions and destabilize North Africa through the assassination of Gaddafi. It could be murder and bloodshed going all over the planet, and it will not classify as a world war until white folks do some of the bleeding. 100 white folks can bleed, and they'll be like, oh, it's a major conflict. 1 million non-white people bleed, and it's just, savages. That's how they do. They've been fighting all. That's what people used to say about the Middle East. They've been fighting over there all their lives. No, that's not true. But anyway, so we're going to talk about the more specifics, about how the United States is going its own way, and is dragging UK and Britain, and is dragging the UK and Israel as lapdogs, and how the world is lining up, how the United States is diminishing. And you always look, when empires start to erode, they go from being false democracies to real dictatorships. So there are some things happening here. Now, just like with all, from the Roman Empire to the Turkish Ottoman Empire to the British Empire Some empires fall left, some empires fall right. If this empire is going to collapse, it is in your best interest as a resident or citizen of the United States to make sure you position yourself to push it so that it collapses to the left. You do not want it to collapse to the right. Right now, it is leaning to the breaking point of the right. And if it collapses to the right, then it's going to be one way instead of the other way. And believe you me, with this conflict and the weapons in play here, don't think that you're going to be able to run to the Caribbean or run to Africa and sit on a beach and ride this one out. This will be a conflict of global proportion that will not leave any stones unturned. So it's best to engage in the struggle to bring about justice in thinking you can take your meager resources and run away. And I ain't saying you got to stay here in the belly of the beast. I'm saying wherever you go, you better build a coalition to engage in just revolutionary struggle. Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. Make a one-time donation via the website, diallokenyatta.com, or keep us live and direct on the air. I want to give a shout-out to Chauncey. Call me. Still waiting on to hear from Chauncey, so give me a call. Shout out to my other Patreons and my diligent supporters. Shout out to my brothers and sisters, cousins, uncles, family, all of my Kansas City long-term, lifelong friends and comrades in Kansas City. And if that's what you're into, congratulations on your little Super Bowl thing. I don't know. I prayed against victory, but y'all beat me out. I prayed to the base God. I think next time I want something bad that I can't really affect, I think I'm gonna pray to Shiva. Anyway, let's hear some more of Kansas City's own, the Popper. Proud of you. And I'll catch you on the other end. Q4 Radio, AM 1680.
I tell it how it is. Never can he code it. Fake niggas I despise. I can't understand it.